This is a quick overview of the So Crafty sewing machine sold in the UK by Aldi. It's a embroidery machine, but not a full embroidery machine. It doesn't have a hoop that moves, so you're limited as to what you can do. It does have 200 stitches though. They're manufactured and rebranded by a couple of other companies. There's the Necchi MP2600 and the Tuffsew model that's sold in the States that are identical to all intents and purposes, apart from some screen print on the front of them. Sort of spares and extras for the machine are available from Necchi. So if you contact them by phone, as they're not always shown on the website, you can get things like the extension table, which is a table which goes around here and extends this area out to somewhere like this, which is good if you're doing patchwork work or if you're doing other pieces where you need a bit more flat area to work. The other thing which you can get from them is this little cover plate, which is something that on occasion people lose, and that is quite useful to be able to get that, and that is only £4, and the extension table is £38. First of all, we need to get the thing plugged in and up and running. So you've got a foot pedal. This is very different to the foot pedals I had on my 78 machine. It's just an electronic device with a resistor in it that varies depending on how much you press the pedal, and tells the electronic speed controller inside the machine how fast to go, rather than a big resistor like rheostat that the old machines used to have to power the motor and used to cause them to stall, etc. This plugs into the side of the machine. There's a little sort of typical headphone type jack socket in there, and you'd normally put that on the floor, obviously. The mains connector is one of these figure of 8 type connectors, and you'll see the socket on that also on the side of the machine. And you can now press on to get the machine to boot up. And what you heard there was a slight clunk and a beep. The beep tells you that it's working. The clunk is just the servos and stepper motors inside the machine calibrating, getting ready to select the right stitches and such like. Mentioning there are some people who don't discover this until they've had the machine several years, it seems, on the forums. There's a little removable section here, which means you're left with a very narrow neck here, which can be used for things like when you're doing trouser legs or that sort of thing. You can put it right over the end of the machine and sew it. But if you look in here, there is actually a top secret compartment which has a number of accessories in, like a test piece that they've done in the factory on your machine. It has some feet, it has some other bits which we'll talk about a bit later, and we'll put that down there for when we do talk about it. We've got this one, some spare needles, and various other parts, but we'll talk about all this in a moment. We'll just get the ones we need to talk about them. There's also a little oil dispenser here which you can fill with oil for oiling the machine, and you've got a screwdriver for tightening up anything you need to tighten up, and you've got a little T sort of screwdriver here which is designed for this cover plate here to do these screws should you ever need to go in to defluff it or any other maintenance jobs that you have. I'm just going to put this back on. Goes on there, slides and clicks. The other thing worth mentioning is that the manual for this machine, which comes in a bag like this, is actually quite comprehensive. If you look in the manual, you will find that there are a number of pages that tell you all about the stitches and what they're used for. There's also how to do the buttonholes, there's applications, there's basically most of the questions that come up in the forums are in the manual, but of course nobody likes reading manuals, which is also with the machine. Get a dust cover, which I just lost a second ago, and we can show you the dust cover, and this is folded up very flat. You may not realise what it is. Again, it's amazing what people don't realise. That goes over the machine when you're not using it. Also get an automatic buttonhole foot. You also get this little plate which attaches to the top of the machine and is used to when you are doing lettering, because it has all the numbers of all the different letters that you need. The other thing I should mention really about this machine is there's a very active Facebook group called the So Crafty Aldi Sewing Machine Tips and Advice group, which has lots of members on it there which will be willing to give you advice, help on either sewing or the specifics of the machine. Well worth joining that group if you happen to have one of these machines. There are two positions for the reels on this machine. So here we have a reel which we're going to put on the machine, and one is a little horizontal position that we have under there. And I mentioned earlier about in the little accessory box you get a little post that can shove into a hole on the top of the machine and gives you another position that you can use. Now some people have a preference for one or the other. It depends on the type of reel that you've got, whether it's too big, whether it can be reeled off the end okay or not, as to which one you go for. But when you're using it in horizontal position, you should put this that way round on the end, like so. And what we're doing there, I'll just show you, is we're with it in that position, it makes sure that when the thread comes off the reel, it doesn't get caught on the side of the bobbin. And that's quite an important thing to use. Thread tension, it normally would be set about 4. You don't normally need to adjust that unless you're having particular problems, but look it up in the manual to see what normal stitch should look like and how you use that to adjust the stitch depending on how the stitches look coming out. The other thing we've got on the machine is that if we look at the back corner here, we've got a little cutter which can be used for cutting the thread. So when you select a stitch type, for example, which you do so by going up and down with these two buttons here, it beeps at you. Now mine, I think you can hear that that's not too bad, it's a nice subtle beep, but I've modified mine, which I'll probably put another video up on how to do that, which because the beep was horrendously loud, it's probably difficult to see, but there's actually a light here, and I think you can probably see that on my hand there. This is it's quite light in the room today, so it's probably not showing up too well, but that's an LED light, so there's no worry about having to change bulbs. When you've got your presser foot, you've got a lever underneath which allows you to raise and lower the presser foot, and even a bit more clearance there if you need it. And that when you're doing, say, freehand embroidery or something like that, applique, make sure you've got that down, because when you've got the presser foot down, it actually engages the thread tensioner, and if you've got it up, it's not going to work. We've got feed dogs on this machine that can be like raised and lowered. Now here, these little teeth that grip the fabric and move it forwards and backwards, if you click behind, there's a little lever that allows you to drop them, and they drop down. I don't know if you can see that, but they've actually dropped down now into a low position, so they actually won't grip the fabric now, so they won't try and move the fabric forward, which is the position you would use when you use the machine. Those feet will come back up again when you've actually put it into the other position again. This is something that a lot of people don't realise. That's another one that you see a lot of people get confused about. You drop the feed dogs, it's not until you start sewing again that they'll pop back up again, after you've obviously put them back up again on the switch. As you saw there on the side, there's a hand crank, which is pretty sort of standard thing, which allows you to move the needle manually for that sort of minor adjustments, or when you're trying to thread the needle, and when you're trying to help it through some heavier fabric, all those sort of things. This machine also has a lovely feature of a self-threading needle gadget. So if we put the needle to the top, we're going to now try and show you how you would put some thread on the bobbin. So we've got a thread, loop it around the horn thing, loop it once around the circle disc thing, bring it across the machine, put your empty bobbin onto the end here. Actually, before you do that, you put a bit of the thread through the hole in the side of the bobbin, which is here. Nothing like a bit of pressure doing this on camera. Put that onto there. Right, we then put it into that position. You note at the bottom here that the screen is now saying this sort of two brackets, if you like, symbol. That means that the needle is disabled and this is bobbin spinner is going to spin. So apply some thing onto the pedal, and there we go. We can wind some onto there. You can go all the way to the end and it'll stop automatically, or if you've got enough then you can just stop prematurely, move it across and take it off. So to thread the bobbin, you open the bobbin cover like so, you drop the bobbin in and then you move it past the little area inside there that it's got to catch on. You then hold, to get the thread up through the bottom, you hold the one end of the thread, hand crank the machine through, and it will catch the thread for you like that you can then drag through. And put the cover back on. There we go, that's dropped on already. So now put it under the presser foot and we're literally ready to go. On the machine we've got a needle position switch, which this is these two sort of arrows up and down, and what that does is, you see now if I press it once, it means that the needle will always start in the down position and end in the down position. So if I was to start sewing now, whenever I stop, the needle is down. If I put that up, whenever I sew, the needle is up when it stops. And this is really useful, again, for things like applique where you're rotating material a lot and you don't want the needle to come out of the material when you want to rotate it. I find this is one of the best features of this, and I'm sure it's pretty standard in modern machines, but it was great to find for me. The next to it is the reverse button, which when you press it makes the machine go backwards. It's also used to finish the embroidery stitches, these specialist stitches, and it puts an extra couple of stitches in just to finish them off and lock them in when you finish doing embroidery stitches. If you go onto eBay, you can get feet, or even Amazon, in boxes like this, and that's a selection of just about every foot that a normal sane person would ever want to use. They're totally compatible with the machine, gives you a massive selection of feet, and I think that's about 10 to 20 quid asking which style you go for. Now walking, that's really recommended because there's all sorts of useful feet in there, which makes some particular sewing jobs. And these replace your whole foot assembly, so you have to unscrew the silver screw on the left, which I'll do here, and you need to screw it just about all the way. I might jam that up. Come on. It's probably easier if I do take it all the way. Take that one out, and we can place that. That's really useful where you've got a number of layers of different fabrics that you're trying to sew, and the layers could otherwise, because the feed dogs are pulling the fabric through from below and the top's dragging on the presser foot, you can get the fabrics trying to slide against each other, whereas the walking foot actually walks the the fabric through from the top in the same rate which the feed dogs are pulling the fabric through from their bottom. And this basically makes it a lot easier, so that and gives you a better finish, because you don't have the fabrics trying to slip against one another. And highly recommend getting a walking foot. Okay, now a bit about the control panel. On the control panel you have a stitch selection, which are these two here. As I move up, this corresponds to these numbers here, so that's going along, and we'll see that as we get to 3, the needle there twitched because it needs a different position for that particular one. And you can go through, and if you hold down the button it'll go through in tens. You need to get to say 36, which is down at the bottom. The other factor you've got, if we put this back down, put this back down to our stitch 3 for example, which is a basic zigzag, we've then got 2 other factors. We've got, I can adjust this and move this up a bit so you can see. Right, we're now on zigzag, and we can adjust the stitch length and the width. That's what these symbols mean. This is about the width and this is about the length, and they correspond to these two and these two. So to go up and down on the stitch length, we use those, as you can see, and this is in millimeters. If we do this, this is the stitch width in millimeters. And I think that, I've not worked this out, but I think the defaults have a little ring around them. Then next to that we have the A button, and this puts it into the alphabet mode, which is where we use this little device. And now when we do the stitch selection, it's going to select one of these letters and let you sew it, but that's a whole subject in itself, so I won't cover that here now. And finally, this is the dual needle setting.